Hello and welcome to the Global Leadership Network and our roundtable session on corporations' role in changing Black narrative. Before I hand over to the panel to introduce themselves, we want to welcome our attendees and let you know that this session will be recorded so you can look back in the future. Feel free to ask any questions in the Q&A box and raise your hand to partake in the session. We are now going to start the recording and hand over to our host. Thank you, Mira.
Hello, everyone. So my name is Mira Raikandalia, and I am hosting today's session, which is about the corporation's role in changing the Black narrative. I am one of the co-founders and head of partnerships at BYP Network. BYP Network is the Black Young Professionals Network, and we are the largest network of Black professionals in the UK. My role is actually working directly with corporations to help them attract talent from our platform and enhance their brand as an employer of choice to the Black professional community. Our panelists today, so Kiki is also my co-founder, Kiki Onowinde. She is a CEO and co-founder of BYP Network. I'll obviously let her introduce herself. And Ade Adeyemi, who is a global health policy expert at NHS England, as well as Chatham House. So really exciting panel we've got today. We're going to share our journeys all throughout, keep it quite casual. Please ask any questions. I will incorporate it into this Q&A that I have with them. And the whole idea is, just to really talk about the conversation of like Black Lives Matter, how we can change the narrative, and Chatham House rules as well. So, ideally, any kind of questions that you have, we'll try to, keep it as personal and stay within this group as well. So I want to start off with just asking the panelists a little bit about, tell us a little bit about yourselves and your journeys. And I'll start with Ade.
Afternoon, Mira, and afternoon, everyone. I suppose it's a question of how far do you want to go back, so I'll try and keep it quite high level. To say that I've had an interesting journey. My very first job was for a management consultant firm, and we worked with the likes of GSK and Pfizer on big corporate deals. And then I've slowly progressed into the public sector, the think tank space where I'm at right now. And typically, as you would find with other Black young professionals, it's not always an easy journey, and there's definitely a difference between what I experience and unfortunately what other non-Black colleagues, i.e. white, would experience. But it's been an interesting journey personally. I've always supplemented it with education, and I'm supplementing it with education again, so starting a part-time PhD in global health and social medicine at King's. And that's probably as well coming from a place of having to overprove myself, perhaps, sometimes to advance forwards. But looking forward to the conversation today, because there's something about our own journey internally within corporations, also what our organisations and corporations do outside, which is an interesting, two sides of the same coin. So looking forward to today, but that's me in a bit of a nutshell.
Great, thank you. And Kiki?
Hi, everyone. So as Mira mentioned, my name is Kiki Onowinde, co-founder and CEO of BYP Network, a platform that connects Black professionals with each other and corporations. So my journey started years ago, right? Like I grew up in East London, single parent household. I was very good academically and as an athlete. So I gained a lot of opportunities. So, internships, scholarships, bursaries, you name it. I was quite fortunate, but I noticed those around me weren't quite the same, like even within my own household. And then I started noticing in some of my internships, I'd be the only Black person or Black woman in the room or on the floor. It started to feel a bit different. Like, okay, I know I'm here and I've done very well, but where's everybody else? Or why is it that I'm an international athlete with stellar grades to be here in the room, and the person next to me is like, oh, my dad got me in? Like that kind of discrepancies between both our accolades. And as a Black professional, there is this saying you have to work twice as hard to get half as far. And it's like, yeah, we feel that, we see it, and it shouldn't be the way things are. And I think starting BYP Network was kind of like, okay, I'm a recent graduate now. I'm in the world of work. Not many people look like me, but what are my peers up to? How are they progressing in the world of work? What opportunities do we have? And that inability to see each other because we're not visible in the workspace. So it was this desire to kind of have role model visibility and also get the best opportunities at organizations. And that's kind of how BYP Network started. And it's kind of just grown from there. And I would like to kind of share a video that just talks a bit more, just on the beginning journey. Let me see if this actually works. We've grown up in a world where we are 9 times more likely to go to jail than our white counterparts. A world where black households have 1/10 of the wealth of white households. But what do we expect when we are twice as likely to be unemployed? Yet when we apply for jobs, it takes 80% more applications just to get a positive response. We feel so fortunate to have a job that even when we are being undermined, going through microaggressions and not being promoted, we have to stay put despite a £3.2 billion ethnicity pay gap. This is a world where only 1% of FTSE 100 CEOs are black, and the only route to success that we are shown is music or sports. So we say forget the workplace, let's be an entrepreneur. But black founders only received 0.2% of funding despite €13 billion of investment last year in Europe. Why should we have to work twice as hard to get half as far? I felt these statistics, I lived these statistics. How many of you can relate? It's time to change the black narrative through collaboration, ownership, and investment into the community. I have a solution, BYP Network, an app that connects black professionals with each other and corporations. It's more than a black LinkedIn, because with this platform, we bring together this talented yet marginalized community by facilitating employment, mentoring, networking, and upskilling. So what have we achieved? We have over 40,000 members, and so that summarizes it.
Amazing. Absolutely love that video and the journeys that both of you have had as well. But what I want to know specifically is, I know, Ada, you mentioned that you have a management consultancy background. Kiki, I know you've worked in banking, fintech as well. So specifically, what about tell me more about you being navigating your way through that world as a black professional specifically.
So I'll let Ade start.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting question, because I suppose one has to get quite personal if you want to be honest about navigating these spaces. So I'll give you an example. So one of the things I did quite early on, as I wanted to build a network, was I joined the Fabian Society. The Fabian Society is the oldest political think tank in Britain. They helped found the Labour Party, and I got really quite involved. And a lot of the events there were in the Houses of Parliament, in the Palace of Westminster. And as a black guy, also grew up in East London, represent. You're in these spaces that you don't normally see yourself in. You don't recognize yourself in because you haven't seen other people like you in those spaces. Physically as well, they're quite intimidating. There are gargoyles on the ceilings looking down at you. A lot of the posters, a lot of the paintings are of regal lords, and they're often white men. And so to answer your question, to navigate these spaces, one has to feel really assured or understanding what that difference, that tension, and being comfortable. And actually, what I did, because also Chatham House is on Jermyn Street, also quite close to Buckingham Palace and in that kind of Westminster bubble. So again, I literally had to just kind of be comfortable being in those spaces. So I would go out of my way on a weekend or after kind of school or whatever, and just walk the streets and just kind of talk to myself and say, look, I do have a right to exist in this space. There is nothing preventing me from existing and being natural in this space. And over time, you build on that kind of confidence, you build on that self-assurance. But because those spaces don't typically invite, other people that aren't white and, of that elitism, it can be a little bit difficult to overcome.
Amazing.
Yeah. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say that's really well put, and I was gonna pass it on to you, Kike.
I was gonna say I definitely echo everything that Ade has said. I went through a period of everything's fine, everything's normal, and then it's not. I know people call it getting woke, but it was that moment of, hold on, something isn't right here. Like, okay, I've lived my life in East London, got my grades, all of that stuff, but I didn't know that I grew up in a disadvantaged background. I didn't know that East London was seen as like a poor area, and my school was bad, and I was supposed to fail. And a great example is what happened recently with the A-level scandal and the algorithm. These young kids didn't know that they're supposed to fail. So when this algorithm said, no, you shouldn't have got those A's, so we're going to give you C's, it was like that kind of realization, like, wow, this is the expectation on me. And they got it quite early. Whereas I saw it later on, where because I was always doing quite well, I was always achieving, I was very focused on my sport and things like that. I wasn't aware, I wasn't looking per se. I felt incidences of like being Black in general, like, you know, racist incidents and stuff. But it wasn't until I got into the world of work where I realized the difference. It's like walking into a bank and all the Black people were security guards. They were cleaners. That's it. They were nothing like, you know, you barely see any other Black person. You know, they're not really the MDs, or if they are there, they're not in the client facing role. And it's this kind of feeling of, I wouldn't even call it imposter syndrome. It's just like, you don't belong. I felt like I didn't belong in those spaces, and I was never really comfortable, and I was never really myself, despite being, you know, an A-star student, despite having a 2-1 from a Russell Group university. It still felt like I wasn't enough. And I think that's like scary, right? Like, no matter how much we achieve or how hard we work, there's this whole nother layer and barrier of just feeling like, yeah, I can be here and I can get to the top, even though you look up and like no one else looks at you at the top. So that glass ceiling is automatically there. It's like, you have to be that trailblazer to be able to get to that position. So it is, you know, just as Ade said, it has been for me, creating my own space, right? BYP is that own safe space of helping other Black professionals navigate, and what can we do to change this? Why must we be 10 times better? Like, you know, and I think, yeah, like this is just in finance. It's across so many industries. And to see it in the startup world as well, it was like, where are we? Where are the Black professionals? Why are we not getting these opportunities? When I look at some of my peers who, after I came back from studying my master's for 2 years, they were still unemployed. And it was like, huh? So this is the reality. Like, we do so much where we are with the little we have, only to then have all these barriers when it comes to entering the workplace and just existing in the workplace.
Yeah, I totally agree. And there are these statistics that really shocked me, which is like Black and minority professionals need to apply for 80% more roles to get the same opportunities. And then there are these other statistics that once they do get in, they're like 5 times less likely to be promoted, or they feel like they haven't been promoted. So it seems like, I remember my experience was I went to school in Edmonton, North London, where half of my school was Black, and then went to Russell Group University and pretty much didn't see any Black people, and then the workplace even less so. So it's like the further up you get, the less representation you see, even though London is super diverse. So I definitely agree with both your points there. Ade, I did some LinkedIn stalking of you before this, and found out that you are actually the chair of the BAME network for NHS England. How do you think the experience differs from being Black compared to like other minorities? So, you know, the acronym BAME is kind of the point I'm trying to make. And Kiki, after that, if you want to go into your views on it as well.
Sure.
Yeah, well, we don't have to think about the experience. We have the evidence. We have what we call the workforce race equality standard. So the NHS, you know, 3rd largest employer in the world, largest employer in Europe. We have the workforce statistics that shows, unfortunately, as you go up in banding, so as you go up in seniority, pay grade in the NHS, the representation of Black, Asian, ethnic minorities massively decreases. We have all the evidence about that. We have the evidence about, you know, why that happens, that actually, and even in the application stage, you know, hundreds apply, not many get through to interviews, not many get through to, you know, being selected. I think, you know, it's lots of experiences there. And actually what I've started trying to do in my role as chair is shift some of the conversation, because a lot of the conversation we've been having rightfully has been one of fairness and equity, you know, diversity, inclusion. It seems to be a moral one. I'm beginning to wonder if there's at least in my sector of health, if there's space for more of a patient safety one, because actually, and you see it in like, you know, gender pay gaps, for example, rather than making the moral argument for, you know, fairness, people are making more the business case for it, the economic argument that more diverse teams give you better performance you know, in business. So similarly in healthcare, you know, there's a thought about patient harm, and what harm are we causing to patients? Because the policies and processes we come up with in the ivory tower of NHS England, NHS improvement, that, you know, says this cancer pathway should be like this, or this healthcare clinic should be deployed like this. If you don't have the ideas of BAME people, if you don't have the ideas of black people, if you don't have the contributions of their skills and talents, then what harm are we calling to patients at the end of the pathway who, you know,
I think I've read a lot into that as well, and it's really fascinating that you're saying it. But there's statistics about Black women that are dying at higher rates in childbirth, and the pain of like minority women not being considered as much as like a white male and so on. So would you say that's down to the lack of diversity at the top, or do you know much about that?
Yeah, and again, direct experience. So I'll save the blushes of the NHS Trust where it happened, but my wife gave birth to our daughter 2 years ago, and I had direct, unfortunate experience of that, where yes, it starts at the top because everything filters down really, and it's about culture in organisations. And so if your matrons and midwives and the people delivering care to people don't have, you know, aren't representative of that community that they're serving, then yes, the different perceptions of pain, the different understanding of, you know, family attitudes, and yes, actually it's okay for this person to be in the room listening to the consultation, or actually, you know, what we hear in the media about this person isn't true because, you know, we have to recognize them as a patient, and I come from that community so I understand them. All of that is massively improved. And just another quick example of the health inequalities is again, it starts from education. You know, a lot of the clinical handbooks and textbooks that doctors and nurses and clinicians read from describe conditions in white bodies. So, you know, if you look at a rash, or you look at description about, you know, meningitis, or, you know, redness around the mouth, or you look at, you look in any textbook, you'll see lots of, you know, pictures of white skin. Whenever my daughter has a condition and I go on NHS Choices, I really dread going on there because I have no idea what I'm looking at. I'm looking at a picture of a white baby. I've got a black baby, and you see how the health inequalities can exacerbate when you have, you know, it's that kind of thing that we're so from the top representation. You know, imagine if the people doing that website, there were a couple more black people on there, they could have easily told you, you know, you need to think about these things.
I like to jump on. Sorry, if I jump on that, you know, it's such a good point, and I think I'll start with that. I think I realized once I wouldn't say the word diagnosed, but once I was told that I have sickle cell trait, and what was I, 22 when I found out, and I never knew about sickle cell in general, sickle cell trait, or cared about it, right? Because no one ever spoke about it. But then doing more research and then realizing, you know, it's a Black community thing. Like it was, you know, in order to help protect us from was it meningitis or something, and a lot of us have it. And if two people have sickle cell trait, the likelihood of having a child with sickle cell, X, Y, Z. But the point is, there isn't enough research about it, or there isn't enough, there isn't a cure for it, there isn't enough people looking into it. And I always say it's because it's a Black problem. So it's like, I think the lack of diversity within the medicine, within, you know, doctors and stuff, means that they don't have that passion of, oh, let me explore sickle cell trait and figure it out and help, you know, this community, because it's not really affecting me. And I know that sounds quite morbid, but that is the reality. We need more Black doctors. We need more Black people in medicine to also focus on Black problems. So just like what Ade said, if there was, you know, that an extra Black person making that website, it'd be like, well, my baby's Black. Can we have a Black baby there, please? You know, and it's the same for outside of medicine when we see big organizations making bad decisions on marketing. And you're like, well, if they just had a Black person in that team, that would never have been approved. They would have said no. But the thing is, health is wealth, right? Like health is so important and so serious. And the fact that, you know, during COVID, you know, the stats showed that BAME people were dying more in the UK, in the Western world, not necessarily in Africa. So we have to question, like, why is that? And I think the report that was, you know, released late, because they didn't want to release it in case it heightens tension, showed that Black people were less likely to be admitted to hospital, but were dying the most during COVID. What does that mean? Does that mean that we come and we say, oh, I'm coughing, I don't feel so good, and they turn us away, and then we go home to die? And that is the reality for the kind of health sector for Black people. We are more likely to be on NHS than private. And with that, we're less likely to be believed. I mean, my mum has had pain in her leg for a long time. Every time she goes, oh, it's nothing, it's nothing, it's nothing. And then she's having to mend it herself. Like, that's not okay. And I think that again, this is the whole diversity, issue across with hiring, with just people being educated on topics and just how much like racism or naivety, whatever it is, has an impact on Black lives, essentially.
Completely agree, and I think that's super powerful, and I love how it was linked completely to, as an example, as a very clear example and visual example to healthcare and the NHS, because Kiki, we both see it across multiple sectors when it comes to media, tech, social media. I mean, recently there was a documentary, The Social Dilemma, which said for the first time in history, a bunch of it's about 70 to 80, 25 to 35-year-old white male have control over the actions of 2 billion people who use Facebook. So, the impacts of not having diversity in these organizations is actually more prominent now than ever before. I want to move into Kiki, actually. You were featured in Forbes yesterday. And a big question and a big thing that you spoke about was a response to when corporations say that the talent just doesn't exist. We saw that with Wells Fargo, the CEO claiming that was the case last week. What do you say to companies who tell you that they try, but they just don't believe the talent exists?
Yeah, I mean, that Forbes piece was so in depth. It was a whole 9-minute read of just all the views and all the solutions and everything that we've been feeling as a community. Because, I'm fed up. We're fed up. The talent does exist. We know it does exist, but it doesn't exist to them in the sense of maybe what they're looking for, to them, that you're not the right fit. Is it because, maybe they're not speaking right? Maybe they didn't go to Oxbridge because Oxbridge has a problem in gaining Black, students because of their own biases. Is it because, they don't know someone? A lot of jobs are through referrals as well. So if your organizations are white and you're getting referrals, you're going to get more white people in your organizations. If you're not trying, the whole point of why I started BIP was companies like the talent doesn't exist. So every 5 years, they're moving the dial. Our target in 5 years' time is to double Black representation. 5 years passes, we couldn't do it because we couldn't find the talent. And this just was continuously happening. And I felt like this will continuously happen for 100 years if they have the ability to do so. So the invention of BYP was the talent does exist, but since you're struggling to find it, we'll just bring them all together, make it easier for you. Mm-hmm. And make it easier for us to see our role models because we're not represented in the media. We're not shown. We're shown only entertainment, music, sport as our only route of success, when actually there are people doing incredible things. There are people who are leaders, who are business owners, and who are doing, are role models within industries, but they're not even getting the promotions that they deserve. They're being passed over by people that they even trained. That's what's happening. Or they get the pay rise, maybe still not what they should be on, but they don't get the title. And I think that these are things that organizations are doing. And so they're looking to get someone else in a leadership position who's already in that position, but they're like, we can't find that person who suits, instead of promoting someone up or bringing someone from an organization who's worthy of that position, but they need promoting up. And we've witnessed that, right, with some of the organizations we've worked with. You can have the stellar CV, but something just isn't right. And these are also the biases as well. Wells Fargo, CEO, he said that with so much confidence to, his employees. And then people are thinking, what? You service Black people. Black people are struggling to get loans from you. You wonder why. And this is what I mean. It's a real trickle-on effect and why it's no longer acceptable. The lack of diversity in organizations isn't acceptable. It's having such an effect on Black lives every single day. So when people are screaming that Black lives matter, it does matter. And corporations do have a strong role to play in changing all of that. Corporations are multi-billion-dollar companies. They're not employing Black people enough, so they're not getting the wealth that they need as well. And we've seen the stats when it comes to wealth generation. And even when we look at policies in the past that the government have put on Black people, especially in America, they weren't able to buy certain homes. They were getting the bad loans when, the financial crisis happened. So they were more likely to lose their homes. It just doesn't stop in terms of how corporations impact Black daily lives. So when people are screaming again, Black Lives Matter, and we're talking to the police, again, an institution, it's not just it's the police, you're killing us, but it's everything. To exist as a Black person is being constantly told that it's traumatic. It's traumatic to be Black. How are we supposed to feel in our daily lives going to work, knowing that, oh, they just killed another black person. Oh, they said no to my loan. Oh, they're about to repossess the house. But yet supposed to show up and smile at work, and everybody oblivious to the barriers that we are facing. So, yeah, I feel like I've gone off on a tangent. I just get very passionate, but a lot does need to change. And corporations, that's why BYP, again, was like, we're going straight for the organizations. Because I saw the opportunity there that these are the ones that have the money, that have the potential to uplift us, to empower us, and they're not doing it. And so that's why, stuff like BYP is super important to changing that.
Yeah. And I completely agree with everything you say. And one thing that when I speak to corporations, I always try echo is to expand the parameters of what is considered a successful candidate, because your idea of what success is deeply rooted in historical kind of elitist models. So, for example, if you work in an industry that is historically or notoriously homogenous, going out of your way to try and change what a normal candidate would be would actually diversify your pipeline and bring in that diversity of thought as well. For both of you, I guess this question is, we've got corporations on this panel, people here listening. What would you say, as a step-by-step kind of guide, what could companies start doing right away to help improve the Black narrative within their corporation? So just back to the main question. Sorry, it's a big question.
Ade, if you can touch on the medical area as well, because obviously this is focus on medical.
Sure, Kiki. Yeah. So I'm interested in trying to take a bit of a reflective step back these days, just to make sure that what I think is the right step for corporations to be taking is the right step. Because a bit of a weird example here, but I mean, philosophically, I always feel like policies and laws are the best way to enact change. And I'll give you an example. I think about the use of plastic bags, and for years beforehand, or even sugar, for example, in drinks, for years beforehand, trying to educate people, encourage people, bring your own bags, 5p a bag, overnight change, massively. Uses massively changes, and similarly to sugary drinks, a tax, you massively change behaviour. And so when I think about corporations now, I think about the acts like the Equality Acts that we have that guides behaviour. I wonder if, and I'll just give another example. So this morning I heard Boohoo, the clothing brand, they've been accused of using sweatshop labour and stuff, but their annual performances suggest that their customers don't actually care. And visibly you think younger people more liberal, they would care about that thing, but they've been having bad reports about their pipelines for years. Apple the same, Starbucks, Amazon, their tax behaviours, but consumers, I don't see them actually shifting the dial in corporations. And if you leave it to corporations, I don't see many shifting their behaviours as well. They'll apologise for a blackface thing or a misstep, and then they'll continue as like nothing's happened before. So long story short, I'm still a bit of an open mind here. I'll absolutely listen to yourselves as experts in creating the excellent BYP, and you are hearing from many people and talking directly to corporations. But me personally, I'm still unsure as to whether we might need stronger legislation to guide behaviour of corporations.
Yeah, great, Ade. I think on my side, if we can look at corporations, and then I want to just talk a bit about the system in general. So like I said, education, the prison system, there's so much to it, right? That even before we even get to corporations and get jobs, we've already had a million barriers thrown against us. Little things like when my friend, her nephew has been getting in trouble at school. He's only 5. I need to talk to him. I get really scared. Because I'm like, you have to really talk to your nephew, or you have to talk to school, because they'll try to kick him out, because statistically, black boys get kicked out of school young from, primary school much earlier than anybody else. And that's it. He's on a path to prison. There is this exclusion that takes them on a path to prison. So that's all separate. And that's also part of the problem, that when we now get to corporations, they've got these biases, right? Employees within them have biases. You go on the train, you pick up Metro, and it's like, black boy gets stabbed. And they're looking at, oh, these black people again, right? That's the view that they're seeing. They go into their organization, they see the black cleaner, they see the black security guard. And so in their mind, there is this kind of black people are inferior, black people are this. Whether they know it or not, it's in there. But when it comes to hiring, they can't see like, oh, okay, there's this, black boy or black girl who's interviewing. They don't have that affinity that we spoke of in the fourth piece, where they're like, it reminds me of my little brother, I'll give him the job, or, that extra kind of bit of care for the applicant, because they can't relate. And so it comes to recruitment, retention and reputation. Recruitment in the sense of changing recruitment practices. Have you looked, are you being biased? Are your psychometric tests more designed for a certain type of people to pass? If black people don't even know that they have to do a psychometric test when they apply, what hope do they have? When some people know from the day they're born, hey, this is how you get into the law program. This is how you get into investment banking. We don't know what we don't know as black people. What can your organizations be doing in advance to let us know? Hey guys, in secondary school or in sixth form or at university, this is what you will need to do if you ever want to work at my company. So that I've already got a 3-year head start, knowing that, okay, I must start practicing. These are things that you need to tell us in advance of what needs to be done and really do your outreach. Showcase your employer personality, your employer branding. Why should we work for your company? Who's in there? Is it all white people? Okay, what are you doing for inclusion? What are you doing to attract more black people? What are you doing to promote more black people? You have to also market to them. It's not just like, oh, they'll be lucky to get a job. It's no, you want them, you want their talent, you want their diverse mindset, you want them to bring something different to the table. So if you're not even trying that in terms of your own employer branding, in terms of your recruitment practices and your outreach, then you don't have much chance, right? And then the retention side of things as well. Like I said, why are black colleagues not being promoted? Why is it they're at the same role for a long time? Why is it the people that they're training are going above them? When you sit at your leadership table and everybody looks like you, don't you question, that doesn't look right? What are we missing out on? Ultimately, the world is changing. And D&I, the reason why it's such a big topic is because the world is getting more diverse, is because London is super diverse. So it's only at a disservice to your organization if you're not marketing to these other communities. And with this millennial generation, we ourselves are getting our own level of wealth, right? That you won't be able to target or you won't be able to market to, because we'll think, this company is not for us. I completely agree with Ade in the sense that, this company does a mishap and then everybody forgets about it. And that's something that I do feel on our community. We do need to do better. We do need to hold these companies accountable. And we do need to kind of stay, like if we say we are not shopping at this company because they were racist, we need to collaboratively stick to that. But I think that's also a problem that we have, because until they realize that, the black pound or black dollar is strong and is powerful when we move collaboratively, that's when companies respond. They respond to their wallets, their pockets. And I think that's the change we need to make on our side as a community. But for the organizations, I do think they need to, all those practices, recruitment, retention, reputation, they need to work on it and really be truthful about the changes they need to make internally.
Yeah, I totally agree. And, you touched on the business case about it, Kiki, as well. And there are these stats that, I think a recent McKinsey report just said companies in the top quartile for racial and ethnic diversity are 35% more likely to have financial returns above their respective national industry medians. So of course, I don't think the argument is just economic, but if we were to make that argument, it's quite clear that ethnic diversity makes a huge difference when it comes to the bottom line as well. Kiki, one for you as well. So we're obviously hosting the BYP Leadership Conference in just closing off Black History Month, October 30th. I'd love for you to tell us a little bit more about why you've decided to host that event and what it's meant to bring to the Black community, corporations, and allies.
Yeah, great question. So we had an amazing conference last year with about 800 Black professionals in attendance, 15 or so corporate sponsors. And, the feedback was like, it felt like Black heaven, like it was I can't even say the word, it was transformational essentially for a lot of people, because they had never seen that many Black professionals in one room focused on professional development, like maybe at church and things like that, but not like, wow, this person is CMO of that organization, or this person is the MD of that organization. It was that role model visibility that we crave, that we need for our own development, right? To know that I can do it because he did it and he just told me how to do it. And this year with COVID, it's been a bleak year for the Black community in general, right? With people losing businesses, losing homes, losing their jobs, and just people dying, losing their loved ones. And just all the uncertainty that we felt, loneliness, mental health, mental well-being, and just this kind of feeling of like, what next? Black Lives Matter happened during this period. It dies down a bit. Suddenly everyone's forgotten, but we haven't, because we're living it. It's our experience. And this time we want to believe things are different, things will change. And we have felt it as an organization, more companies being like willing to, change the narrative or, improve D&I in their companies. But for our community, the question is, how do we ensure there's long lasting change? How do we ensure that change is now, forever? And so the BYP Leadership Conference is called A Decade of Proactive Change. And why it's got that strong title is because enough is enough. We all need to come together and make plans on how we're going to change the Black narrative, how we are going to ensure that in a decade's time, we will not have to scream Black Lives Matter. We will not have to get, press telling us that we're dying the most from COVID. We're losing the jobs the most. We don't want that anymore. It's enough is enough. And so this conference is very powerful. We bring Black leaders from across different industries, and everybody gives advice. Everybody gives opinions. It's not just an inspirational event. No, it's an event that will lead to people going away and knowing exactly what they need to do to be a part of the change. I always talk about BYP. We started 4 years ago next month, right? And in 4 years, we've done a lot, right? We've done a lot, but there's so much more work to do. But imagine 10,000 Black professionals that will be attending, all come together and they all know what to do, and they all start their own versions of BYP style businesses or whatever it is they do. In 10 years' time, things will be different, for sure. And corporations have a role in that leadership conference. They need to show that they're here also to make sure this change happens, that it is a decade of proactive change for their companies too, and that they'll bring out their Black senior leaders to tell us how they got to the top and how we can too, or what we can do to start our businesses, get investment. It's an event that is like, we're not here just to hi everyone, like meet new. We're here to change the world. And so it will be very powerful. I am very excited. And, I made the decision of like, you know what, we're going to do it. And even though it's online and it's not in person, we don't get that feel, we can still have the power and the strength through the screen. And we can still bring together an incredible amount of people to learn, share, and just feel confident that change can happen.
Amazing. And I think, like on a personal note, like I've been working with a lot of companies for this conference, and a lot of organizations who are sponsoring are really using this as an opportunity to present career opportunities to Black professionals, streamline that talent acquisition, connect, have a chat, just how you would do at a normal careers fair. But, this is really focused on Black professionals. So I definitely recommend having a look. I got a question that for both of you that something that's quite really close to my heart, and it's around allyship. So a lot of companies, a lot of mentors, a lot of people from different organizations have reached out and been like, how do we support the Black community as a non-Black person? So in your kind of opinion, what makes a good ally, and what should allies be doing right now to support? I guess I'll start with you, Ade.
Yeah, thanks. Again, in a learning phase at the moment as I react to what's happening recently. But I'll give an example of what I'm experiencing as chair of the BAME Staff Network, NHS England. So one of my glib first answers is one kind of get out of the way, and there's a very useful phrase that people might have heard recently, and I'm still trying to decode it myself, but do the work yourself, because sometimes you have well-meaning allies who come and say, I'd love to help, tell me what I need to do, or let's have a conversation about your experiences, and that's not what they're saying in word for word, but the logical conclusion of that conversation with them is a rehashing of your own personal experiences, your trauma, the weathering effects of microaggressions over and over. They want to understand and hear from you directly. And a message I would send to allies, if it means anything, is that's not very helpful for Black people to be doing to you. It's exhausting, it's fatiguing. And so the most effective thing to do is to be an ally, to be an advocate in spaces where Black people are not present. So, and then that's all speaking truth to power. Again, a phrase that we kind of throw out flippantly sometimes. That there are rooms where discussions are being had, interviews are happening, decisions are being made where Black people aren't present, and someone with a racial lens or a equality lens could see the outcome of this and say, actually, the outcome of this wouldn't be great, or we need more representation here. That's when allies should speak up. But I think things that require, in my own personal view, the kind of effort or hand-holding from Black people can be quite exhausting. And so it's definitely a bit of a please don't.
Yeah, I echo everything I just said, like to the T. I think during this period, there was a lot of, allies who were very much like, oh my God, I didn't know. How did I never know? Whereas the Black professionals, the Black community, we've been knowing, we've been complaining, we've been, trying to speak out about what we're going through with no one listening. And suddenly there was just this moment where everyone was like, oh my God, this is so new. And it's like, well, no, it's not. And so there was that frustration because obviously allies were very much like, how can I help? What can I do? But then it was also exhausting because we were trying to process everything that was going on, all the trauma that we were witnessing, and trying to digest like what is happening in our lives today. And even though it was well-meaning, it was like, actually, what you needed to have done is do all your research. First and foremost, go and read those books that are already out there. Go and read everything online that was already out there. See what you can do. And if you did, you would have known that, make sure you do reach out to your Black colleagues and let them know you're here if there's anything that you need. But on your side, I will be an ally in the sense of advocating for you. You deserve that promotion that you didn't get that time. I'm going to advocate for you. Oh, you know what? I know a person. I'm going to introduce you. Open up your networks, open up that what they don't have. Give them what they don't have in terms of for their own professional development, for their own economic development. So that is what we need from our allies. Like, how can you economically help to empower the community any way you can versus being more of a burden and like, do you need, what can I do? Teach me more, tell me more. Like, that's quite frustrating. There is a role for allies. We need allies. I love allies. BYP Network has so many allies, and I always talk about how much I love allies. But it's when allies know where their role is in the equation of changing the Black narrative. That's in their role is to help change the Black narrative, but not take up space, right? Yeah. And that is also a thing. We know that in this D&I space, most of the money went to white women, ultimately. And that's a conversation in itself, because they are allies, but then it's also like, hold on, are you taking up space? Is there Black people you could also help bring in? Are there Black women that could be doing this very role or this consultancy role that you took? So there is a big debate on it, and I think that it is just being aware of things, like being helpful, but also knowing when, you being helpful has actually taken away from somebody else.
And then also just very quickly, when you're being unhelpful in a performative way, so performative allyship, when you're doing allyship for the sake of other people, seeing that you're doing allyship, no thanks.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a word that's been used a lot in this period, that performative allyship, and you see a lot of and personally, like, to me, like I run this event, a monthly event about corporate allyship, which is exactly what Kike said, not taking up space, but using maybe even your skills and talents to be able to progress the community. Like I personally dedicate my entire life to helping to working at BYP and pushing the agenda. But it's only very recently where I started speaking up is post Black Lives Matter, because, I thought it wasn't my space to speak up, but now it's like I have a role when it comes to allyship. So that's my space. So instead of talking about the Black experience, which is something that I can never ever echo, talking about how we can all be effective allies is something that I'm quite passionate about. So yeah, like I think allies are super important. I have a friend who is now mentoring 4 people at BYP, and she's opening doors at corporations for a lot of our members. So if you have that ability to mentor, to put budget into into working with organizations where Black talent congregates, where you have just there are many opportunities to be able to do so without taking that space. So I agree with both of you. That's the end of my questioning. We've been speaking for 45 minutes, and we were told to leave it open the last 15 minutes to anyone who has any questions. So yeah, I kind of leave it to, if anyone has any questions, please type them in the chat, and yeah, we can kind of go from there.
If I could, no, you go, Kike.
No, go on. No, go on.
Well, I was just going to say, just as you're kind of gathering thoughts and comments from people, I just wanted to say that the work that you and Kike are doing, but particularly shout out to Kike on the BYP, speaks a lot to something that, again, I'm only kind of really learning because I've only been recently made chair of our network. So yeah, it's definitely opened up like new realities to me. And there's something that I'm really kind of understanding about the strength of, where you put your energy. So you can apply your energies to trying to change the old, or you can apply, and it's not that dichotomic, but generally you can apply to changing the old, you can apply to creating the new. And whilst you obviously need a blend, the bias that I think I see in BYP towards creating the new is so much needed, because again, up until now, this space, which is, and I'm so glad the video said it, more than just a black LinkedIn, is creating the new, where those energies can go. And generally it shifts a paradigm. It genuinely shifts a paradigm where corporates will see, okay, look, if we're not on this trend for lots of different reasons, not only just the corporate social responsibility, but business performance, we will lose out. And it's that kind of thinking and that kind of change that then other people will, the early adopters have already started. I know she's had lots of sponsors, and you're talking to lots of corporates, Mira. But over time, you will shift the window, and more will come on. So yeah, really well done.
Yeah, thanks for that, Ali. I mean, I completely agree with that. I mean, the vision of BYP was, we do need a new world, right? Like, and not a new world, per se, but like, we need to find each other that all want to make that change, because the representation or the media output of the Black community is not accurate. We're not a monolith, right? There's different experiences. Not everybody is, as they say, knife crime. It's like a small percentage of people are in that zone. The majority are not, but yet that's what we're pushed out. Or a small percentage of people are elite athletes, right? And you have to be the rarest of the rarest of the rare to actually succeed in sports. But yet we're shown that's the path to success. And so all these other industries, all these other fields, all these other ways of making money and being creative and, fulfilling your potential is blind to us. And it goes back to what I said. You don't know what you don't know. If I don't know that, actually, I've got all these skills and I love all of this, I could be the person who is doing the technical processes behind the musician. I wouldn't know that if I don't see them or nobody tells me about those roles. And I think, going to Elizabeth's question about how do you see career guidance in schools help on this, is organizations need to be in the schools. I'm talking about send representatives to schools earlier. Just get them ready. Why, if we can't develop our own talent in the UK and we're crying that there's not enough talent, there's not enough people in tech, but you organizations are not investing in the next future generation, what do you expect? Companies have been in existence for hundreds of years, but yeah, if you're not investing in people who will start working in your company in literally the next 5 years, the next 10 years, how do you expect to see the pool of talent that you speak of? Send your representatives to these schools. Talk about the careers that they have, different organizations. Do more school career fairs in general. Year 7 students should know about a career in law, a career in finance. But we don't know. We find out so late. Only when it's time to pick our subjects or go to A-levels is when we're having to think, okay, what should I do? I don't know. Just tell us in advance and we can make our own decisions during those years of development. But if we're only seeing one trajectory, that's what we will think is success, and we think is the only way of having a good life. So I think, again, corporations have the biggest part to play in changing the Black narrative, hands down, and it's across the whole system.
If I may, Mira, and I'm glad it's taken us 45 minutes or so to come to a point of contention, but maybe just, and again, I don't have the answers here, but PK, just maybe something to throw back, because I take the view or a thinking that some of your managers and directors in these corporations have, short-term goals. They've got shareholders who care about the returns immediately. Some of these aspirations, so like delivering or putting money aside to do a program that goes to schools, they don't see the benefits until 15, 20 years. So it's not in their immediate concern to want to invest in that unless you've got a strategic visionary thinker and the leader, the likes of, again, unfortunately male models, but your Bill Gates or those kind of people. Yeah. They're not concerned with that long-term view. So I wonder if the onus on that kind of conversation should rest elsewhere rather than with corporations. Just a thought.
I love that. It's both. So we say they don't have that view. Some of it isn't 10, 15 years. Some of it literally is 5 years, right? From sixth form to graduation, it's 5 years. And they do have this, and apprenticeships as well. Yeah. They do have you. The stats are out there. We know about the future of work. We know everything is moving to technology. We know there's not enough women in STEM. How can we still be saying there's not enough women in STEM and yet not doing enough to get more women into STEM, or not doing enough to make sure the next generation means that there will be too many women in STEM, right? So it has to always be long term, because the organization isn't to die in 2 years' time. It's to survive for thousands of years, but it won't survive if they don't have the right talent pool. Some of these organizations didn't see Brexit happening, where it's like, actually, you do really have to focus on your home talent now, because, it might be difficult to get other talent from elsewhere. And there's a role from the governments, right? The government needs to do more to impose this. Organizations maybe can get some kind of tax credits, whatever it is, if they spend more money on schools, on the next generation, on upskilling the population. What can the government do to incentivize organizations to give more? CSR is a thing. Cool, but that's separate. It needs to be part of the business objectives. And just like Black Lives Matter has now made this whole shift, and suddenly the budget is within HR versus their extra budget somewhere, it's the same way that these organizations can make a shift of, okay, we need to invest in that next talent, and it's important for the survival of our company long term.
Amazing. I completely agree. And there are charts. I mean, there's the Tech She Can chart. I think it was started by PwC, and that's very focused on going into schools for getting young girls into STEM. And there's about like 50 organizations in the UK, last I checked, who have signed up to that. So they actively do that. I think the same needs to happen for underprivileged schools, minorities, and so on. Elizabeth also asks, for career change later, how do we get older people involved? And I guess this is quite relevant to BYP, because our talent pool, even though we say we're young professionals, our sweet spot is very focused on like 25 to 35-year-olds, maybe like second, third, fourth jobbers. So yeah, Kiki, do you have a kind of point on that?
Yeah, in terms of career change, I mean, again, so a lot of the talks I give is on the future of work. I am tech is the future, tech is the future, tech is the future person. So for me, I'm very biased in the sense of I think everybody should get into tech. And again, tech isn't necessarily coding, right? I don't code, but tech is being able to think about products that need to exist, or being having the knowledge you need so that you can navigate the tech space. Obviously, of course, this is healthcare as well. There's a lot of tech in healthcare. Like all the systems that you use. If the computer's slow, it's a problem. They're saying robots are going to take over doctors soon. These things are happening. They are building these things. So it's like, how do we ensure that whatever this career change is, there's always a mindset of the future and innovation. And I think for older people, they have to be willing to get involved in that. I know it seems difficult. Oh, I can't be, how do I even access this or that? But they have to learn. And I always take my mum as an example. She just loves learning, right? She did her LLB and LLM and LPC all within her 50s to 60s. And during this COVID period, she's just been online learning Confluent and all these technical, I don't even know them. So I don't know what she had her own desire of like, I want to learn what's going on and how to just make sure I'm upskilled. So it is an onus on the individual to upskill themselves. There's a lot of free platforms online to learn courses. But then with organizations, there are loads of initiatives like getting women back into work after they have children, because there's a huge talent pool there that's untapped because they, have to maybe give up their careers. There's sports people as well that need career changes. Again, these organizations can help. And just in general, like, why is it that, okay, you only want to hire someone who has 10 years of experience in this one particular role? Are there transferable skills from another role? So it's about that open-mindedness. So even though everything I'm saying sounds kind of hopeful, these things will happen and can happen. And I think that as a population, as a community, we have to be hopeful of the future and get into the future, which is tech.
Yeah, totally agree. We've got only a few minutes left. If there's any more questions, please write them down. But I think this has been a really, really good, informative panel. I love the fact that we had a healthcare representative, so we talked a little bit more about something that's so pertinent in our lives right now. And then obviously, Kiki, with your experience in this particular, your life mission, I've seen you so adamant about this ever since I've known you, which is like to really change that Black narrative. And every time you're on a panel or something, you really present that quite nicely. So I've loved this. I've loved hosting you guys. Just one last one sentence from both of you. How can people reach you? Why should they reach you? I guess a closing statement as well.
I'll let Ade start.
Ade start, yeah.
Cool. And actually, if I could just quickly revisit something Kiki said at the very beginning about the sickle cell issue. Sickle cell is one of the oldest diseases around us, and we know a lot about it. We don't. We've known about it for a long time. We don't know a lot about it because the representation in the scientific community isn't great. And so again, that for me is just a stark reminder, because I've been in a C-suite boardroom where they've had options about what drugs to invest in, and because they don't have a lived experience of that, that's just something they didn't consider. And we see this in gender. I'll just drop this real quick. There is no scientific reason why you have a female contraceptive. That's the genderness of men want to control females' bodies. Scientists could have developed the male contraceptive, but that's another story for another day. Closing remark. I mean, get in touch with me if you think I can help in any way, advise in any way. As Kiki says, and as what BIP is doing, we need to build each other up. And I love to share opportunities, particularly about the health sector. We welcome people of all ages, and particularly the NHS is an interesting place where older people, because of their more lived experiences and knowledge, actually have greater impact in terms of applying, just a stronger sense of problem solving or skill set. Anyway, closing statement for me. I think that's it. Yeah, it's been really good. Lovely to see both of you, and more power to both of you as well in our different journeys.
Thank you, Ade. My closing speech is, I guess, add me on LinkedIn is the best way to reach me, with a bit of a note of kind of why you add me on LinkedIn, as well as, BYP Network. You can go on our website, you can email us at info@bypnetwork.co.uk. Obviously, we have our conference coming up. There's ways that your corporations can partner with us. And we're always doing events, right, where we push out a lot of content to help educate and uplift the community. So you can always get involved. You can always offer out your own content that we can market to the community. So I think my closing statement on corporations' role in changing the Black narrative is that it is your role. Like, you have to help change the Black narrative. You can't sleep on it and think it's not your problem, it's their problem. No, you have the largest part to play, because you can give us the jobs, you can help us upskill, you can give us the representation that we need in terms of the employees that you have. You can invest in the next generation of young talent. So you guys have a large role. You make the decisions that impact the whole world, and we are part of the world. And if you leave us out of those decisions, then we will continue to scream that our lives matter, and demand for change. So thank you, everyone.
Amazing. And mine, just if you want to partner with BYP, my email address is my first name, Mira, at bypnetwork.co.uk. So if a company wants to, use BYP to attract more Black talent, I'm the best person to reach out to. So I think we've hit time, 2:00 on the dot. I don't know if it ever happens, which I'm quite proud of, by the way. So yeah, great. Thank you both once again. Thank you everyone for listening. And yeah, we'll leave it at that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.